Hello, everyone, and welcome to today's session of endocrine physiology. Today's session is about applied aspects of calcium metabolism. So, we'll learn more about tetany, rickets, osteomalacia, and osteoporosis. I'm Dr. Swati Tikare, professor of Alamein Medical College. So, we'll begin as per the competencies and objectives. Competency PY 8.2, the objectives. By the end of this class, the student should be able to define tetany, that is nothing but hypoparathyroidism, list the clinical features of tetany, enumerate the features of hyperparathyroidism, list the features of rickets and osteomalacia, and lastly, define osteoporosis and osteopetrosis. So these are our objectives for today's class. So let's begin with hypoparathyroidism. Before we begin, I hope you remember and recall that the calcium homeostasis is maintained by three important hormones, that is the parathormone, then 125 dihydrocholecalciferol, that is nothing but activated vitamin D3, and the third one, the calcitonin. So let's begin with hypoparathyroidism. So as the name suggests, it's decreased parathormone secretion. So when does it happen? Normally, it happens due to the accidental removal of this parathyroid gland when a thyroidectomy is being done for some cause that is related to the thyroid gland. So accidental removal, fall of parathormone results in serum calcium reduced up to 4 to 8 mg per deciliter. As you know, the normal serum calcium levels are between 10 to 11 mg per deciliter. So when the serum calcium falls to such a low level, it results in tetany. So the pathophysiology under this is that why we get certain symptoms or features that are related to the tetany. It is basically because the normal serum calcium level is very essential for maintaining the nerve muscle excitability. It has a stabilizing effect on the nerve and muscle excitability. Whenever the calcium level decreases, this increases the excitability of the nerve and muscle. So all these features that we will be seeing in the next slides related to tetany are related to the fall in calcium resulting in increased nerve muscle excitability. So let's see how can we define tetany. Tetany is defined as a clinical condition due to increased neuromuscular excitability, which is again due to hypocalcemia. So basically, we don't tell it as hypothyroidism or anything, hypoparathyroidism or something like that. But when a patient comes in, when we find some set of symptoms, and that is about because of the increased neuromuscular excitability, then we uh, tend to make this diagnosis of tetany, which is due to hypocalcemia. So, what are the features of tetany? Let us list the most important features, and we will go into the details of it. The first is, as I said, neuromuscular hypersensitivity. Second, carpopedal spasm or obstetric hand. Okay. Uh, Rogers sign, though not the same, but it comes under the same heading. We will discuss it next. The third feature is facial nerve irritability or Chowspeck sign. Fourth one, the visceral manifestations, and lastly, the ECG changes. So these are the important features of tetany, beginning with the first one, the neuromuscular hypersensitivity. As we were saying, because of the decreased calcium, there is increased sodium permeability, which is responsible for the hypersensitivity of the neuromuscular structures. So when there is increased sodium permeability, It results in numbness, cramps, and tingling sensation. And the neuromuscular excitability can be so high that there can be a laryngeal spasm and causing airway obstruction and asphyxia. You can recall, we had already told that parathyroid gland is extremely essential for life, and its removal or absence can lead to death. So this is how it can lead to a very catastrophic condition when there is decreased parathormone, decreased calcium, leading to laryngeal spasm and asphyxia. So the next, this is of course the extreme case when the calcium becomes very, very low. The next feature is the carpopedal spasm or the obstetric hand. So what is this? As the name suggests, carpopedal, a peculiar attitude of hand in tetany. Okay, hand is held in a peculiar position. There is flexion at wrist. Okay, there is flexion at wrist and thumb, and extension of the other fingers. Okay, let us see this picture in the next slide. So this is how it is. Uh, so normally, if the person comes with this particular attitude, his wrist is flexed, thumb is flexed, and also the extension of the fingers, we will call it as carpopedal spasm or obstetric hand. But when we suspect due to neuromuscular excitability and all, but we cannot actually see the carpopedal spasm in their hands, that is where we call it as latent tetany. Okay, in latent tetany, where this particular feature is not obvious, we can bring about this by doing a maneuver. So, what is that maneuver? We tie the BP cuff on the hand and occlude the blood supply by elevating the cuff pressure. Okay, the BP cuff is tied around the arm, upper arm, and we raise the cuff pressure. So when there is occlusion of blood supply, further there will be fall in the calcium level. So that time is the spasm appears, the carpopedal spasm appears. So this particular sign is called as Rogers sign. Let's see in the slide. So this is the typical presentation of carpopedal spasm, flexion at the wrist, flexion at the thumb, whereas there is extension of the rest of the fingers. This is the carpopedal spasm or obstetric sign. So now coming to the Rogers sign. See here, this is a patient where you can't see anything. The thumb is normal, the wrist is normal, the fingers are normal. But in the same person, when we have tied the cuff, raised the cuff pressure, there is appearance of the carpopedal spasm. This is what we call as the Rogers sign. Okay, so this is the second one related to the rickets. Next, third feature of tetany is facial nerve irritability. So as we said, there is already hyperexcitability. So the most superficial nerve which we can tap and get a response is the facial nerve over the angle of the jaw. So what happens because of this irritability, when there is a subthreshold stimulus, it evokes a response. So normally, so threshold stimulus, we should give a threshold stimulus, only then it will evoke a response. But here, a stimulus which is less than threshold, means less powerful than threshold, also is evoking a response. And if you give an adequate response stimulus or threshold stimulus, it evokes multiple response. Okay, so this is what the basis of doing this particular test, checking for the facial nerve irritability. If we do a slight tapping of the facial nerve at the angle of the jaw, there is contraction of the ipsilateral facial muscles, which is called as Chowdhury sign. Please remember all these different signs and features that we are telling can be usually asked in Viva and also part of your MCQs. Okay, so this is what person is giving a slight tap at the angle of the mouth, resulting in contraction of all the facial muscles on the same side, ipsilateral side. So this is the Chopsticks sign. Next feature of tetany is the visceral manifestation, that is, there is intestinal and biliary colic. All this is because of the decreased calcium. There is abnormal in the contraction of the muscles, giving rise to the colic. Then ECG changes. There is a prolonged ST segment and abnormal T wave can be seen in tetany. So these features are useful in the identification of tetany. So treatment would be giving immediately IV calcium gluconate. That would be the treatment for tetany. So I have a small assignment for you to do. So I want you to look up for the following terms. What is pseudo-hypoparathyroidism? Pseudo-hypoparathyroidism, what does it mean? And alkalemic tetany. So this is some exercise for your brain. Next, we finish with the hypo, then we'll move to the hyperparathyroidism. Okay, please remember, parathormone is a hormone which increases serum calcium. If it is decreased, it was decreasing the calcium. And here, hyperparathyroidism means it is going to increase the serum calcium. Okay, so increased parathormone, hyperparathyroidism is increased parathormone. So there may be two causes, primary and secondary. Why the parathormone is increased? First, primary, whenever we say, it is that particular organ itself is responsible. There is some hyperplasia in the hyperparathyroids, in the parathyroid glands. So there may be a tumor of the parathyroid gland which is producing excess of parathormone. Whereas a secondary cause could be there is deficiency of vitamin D. So here what happens? Deficiency of vitamin D, calcium is not reabsorbed properly. So there is low calcium level always. So low calcium level is continuously stimulating the release of parathormone. Okay, so this is the secondary. So if you're getting confused, you can just remember primary and secondary hyperparathyroidism. That's it. Okay, so now coming to what happens. If you know the function of parathormone, it is very easy to understand. So in hyperparathyroidism, what is happening? There is an adenoma of the parathyroid gland. There is excess parathormone that is secreted. So what does it do? It has actions on three organs, on the bone, kidney, and an indirect action on the intestine. So let's begin with its action on the bone. So on the bone, it causes bone resorption, and when it is removing bone, there will be rarefication of the bones, and there is a condition called osteitis fibrosa that can happen. Okay, so basically it is removing bone calcium from the bone and it is adding to the ECF pool. So ECF calcium is increasing. When there is excess ECF calcium, serum calcium, to the tune of maybe 12 to 13 mg per deciliter, then that excess calcium also causes abnormality in muscle tone. Okay, there is loss of muscle tone here. So its next action, as we know, is on the kidney. It will reabsorb a lot of calcium. Okay, so much of excess calcium is reabsorbed that it can result in formation of stones, nephrocalcinosis, and what we call kidney stones. So this is the second thing that can happen. Or third one. One is related to the rarefication of the bones. Excess ECF calcium causes loss of muscle tone. Then increased calcium reabsorption causes precipitation of the calcium and formation of kidney stones, that is nephrocalcinosis. And indirectly, this parathormone can also increase 1,25 dihydroxycholecalciferol and increase the reabsorption from the intestine. Okay, so these are the symptoms of hyperparathyroidism. We will move on to rickets. Okay, so what is rickets? Rickets is a disease of the growing bone. So growing bone means it is in the children, occurs in the children. So in children means only before fusion of the epiphysis. It is due to unmineralized matrix at the growing plates. That means there is no enough calcium available for the mineralization of the matrix. Okay, so that's how the rickets develop. It is caused by deficiency of vitamin D. So there is vitamin D deficiency, hence no reabsorption of calcium, deficient calcium, and hence the bones remain unmineralized. Okay, so this is what the pathophysiology of the rickets. So it is occurring more in the growing bones. So what could be the cause for rickets? Very simple way of remembering the cause for rickets is, first thing, there is inadequate dietary intake of the provitamin D. Okay, so that could be the cause. Inadequate intake. Second, once the vitamin D is taken, there is exposure of sunlight is very essential to convert it into cholecalciferol. So there is inadequate exposure to sunlight. For its conversion to 25-hydroxycholecalciferol, liver should be functioning normally. So there can be a problem in liver disease, or there could be a kidney disease that is coming in, causing a problem in its conversion to 125 dihydroxycholecalciferol. Or there could be, once everything is normal, intake is there, exposure to sunlight is there, converted to 25, no liver disease, converted to 125, no kidney disease, but still once the active vitamin D is also formed, but still there could be a defect in the target cell receptor. So these are simple way of remembering what could be the cause for rickets. The problem can lie anywhere from the intake up to the target cell receptor. Okay. Uh, so this is a simple and not so simple diagram, of course, but I am sure it is very simple for you to understand as I explained to you how the deficiency of calcium will result in actually the resorption of bone and soft bones, how they are happening in the rickets. Okay, let's begin. It's very simple. Let's start. So the first thing and foremost thing is deficient oral calcium intake. Okay, so if there is less calcium intake, definitely the serum calcium will also be less. Okay, transiently. Some other things are trying to make it normal, but it will be low. So once it is low, it will stimulate the parathyroid. Again, parathyroid will release the parathormones. And parathormones' job is to act basically on the bone and on the kidney. So take out calcium from them and somehow raise the serum calcium level. So when they are doing their job, they remove the calcium from the bone and hence making them, there is more osteoclastic activity here, excess osteoclastic activity, and this causes the softening of the bone. Okay, that's how the deficient calcium intake, deficiency of vitamin D results in the soft bones. So let's look at the 10 important clinical features in rickets. So basically remember, since calcium is important for the bone formation and for the teeth formation, majority of our symptoms will be related to bone and teeth only. Okay, so we begin from the top. The bones of the young child is still growing. There is opening here in the skull that is called as fontanelles. So when there is growing is not properly happening, there is delayed closure of fontanelles. There are wide sutures, means in between the skull bones, there are wide gaps. There is frontal bossing. Okay, over here there is frontal bossing and dental hypoplasia. Normal teeth are not uh, formed. Then there is something called rickety rosary. Okay, rickety rosary. There is the at the costochondral junction when the cartilage is formed but not replaced with bone and bone matrix. then there is a swelling there that is seen, that is called as rickety rosary. Okay, like swellings you can see here on either side over the ribs. Okay, similarly you can see a Harrison sulcus. There is bowing of legs. Okay, the bowing of legs is because of the soft bones. Calcium is not there, so bowing of legs, soft bones, swelling in the wrist and ankle joints. You can see the swelling here in the ankle and the wrist joints, which is shown. This is nothing but broadened epiphyseal cartilaginous zone. You know the bone is growing at the epiphyseal plates. The epiphyseal plates are broader, but as and when if the cartilage is replaced with bone, then that cartilage would not be so broad. But since it is not replaced, they are so broad. So these are some of the typical features. There is a short stature, and uh, this is how the rickets uh, picture is. Okay, next let's see one, two more pictures. So this is a radiograph of the bow legs, soft bones. Here you can see a picture where the broad epiphyseal cartilage zone. So these are the ends of bones, long bones, ends of long bones. So normally they are not so wide, but here they are very wide. So this is about the rickets. Next, osteomalacia is also called as adult rickets. So again here there is inadequate mineral deposition per unit of bone matrix. So if this is the normal bone and this is how it looks, in osteomalacia, this is how it looks. So there is less bone matrix. Sorry, there is less mineral deposition per unit of bone matrix. There is only the protein part is not affected. Cause again, it is vitamin D3 deficiency in adults, or it could also be deficiency of calcium in diet. Any of the two can result in osteomalacia. This is very common in women after multiple childbirth and lactation. So this is shows up as bone pain and tenderness, and fractures are more common. So when we find this, we have to suspect vitamin D deficiency or calcium deficiency in the diet. So this is about osteomalacia or adult rickets. There's one more picture depicting because the pelvic girdle is more often affected. So this is a normal bone, and this bone, which is very soft, is more uh, often can get fractured. Okay, so that is what is shown here in this picture. Next, lastly, we have two more nomenclatures for you, that is osteoporosis, which you must have heard before. So what is osteoporosis is nothing but when the osteoclastic activity is excessive, there is decrease in all the constituents of the bone. Here the bone matrix as well as the mineralization, both are decreased. Okay, so both are decreased here, whereas in osteomalacia, only the mineral part was less. This is how you can differentiate between osteomalacia and osteoporosis. Whereas the entirely opposite of osteoporosis is osteopetrosis, where there is increase in osteoblastic activity. This is a healthy bone. You can see the thickness and the density, whereas this is what you find in osteopetrosis. That is, more and more bone is laid out. So there is increased thickness of bone and density, what you can appreciate in this radiology figure, okay, as compared to the normal healthy bone. So because of this, there is also two more problems which happen wherever there are small uh, small lumina where the nerves or blood vessels are following, there may be closure. Okay? And also the hemopoiesis, which is occurring in the long bones, that is also affected in this osteopetrosis. So overall, let's have a small summary. What did we learn today? First one was about hypoparathyroidism, that is decreased serum calcium. because of decreased parathormone, decreased serum calcium, resulting in tetany. Okay, so the features of tetany also we have seen. Then hyperparathyroidism, that is increased serum calcium when demineralization of the bone. So remember, parathormone will increase the serum calcium. So if it is hypo, then there is decreased serum calcium and causes tetany. And if there is hyper, it removes all the calcium from the bone. Vitamin D deficiency, if it is in children, it is called rickets. And if it is in adults, it is osteomalacia. Okay. So here the problem is more about mineralization. Okay. So in these hypo and hyperparathyroidism, all the problems were because of increase or decrease serum calcium. And here the problem is because the calcium is getting removed from the bone. Lastly, the osteoporosis and osteopetrosis. Osteoporosis because of decreased bone matrix and mineral both, and osteopetrosis increased in the bone formation. So these are all the things that we learned in today's class. So that is all about the applied aspects related to calcium homeostasis and the hormones regulating them. Thank you.